It's 2 in the afternoon on Monday, September 22nd here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The story is making headlines at this hour. President Park Geun-hye, who's on a state visit to Canada, will officially sign an already agreed free trade deal on Monday, local time. The 17th Incheon Asian Games are very much underway. Korea stands at the top on the medal rankings after snatching 13 gold medals. And we are exactly 30 days away from this year's International Telecommunications Union meeting. Industry experts from around the world will gather in Busan to discuss cybersecurity and policy. Now, our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye is on a state visit to Canada, where she was welcomed by the country's Governor General. The highlight of her trip, though, will be the signing of a bilateral free trade pact on Monday, local time. Our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun files this report from Ottawa.
Receiving a warm welcome from the Governor General of Canada, who is the Viceroy to Queen Elizabeth II, President Park said she hopes the soon-to-be signed bilateral FTA will maximize the joint potential for co-prosperity and contribute to international peace. Seoul and Ottawa will sign the trade deal on Monday after President Park and Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper's summit. The FTA will remove tariffs on 99% of traded value in the next 10 years, and it's expected to raise Korea's GDP by 0.04% over the same period.
Our major products are automobiles, auto parts, washing machines, and refrigerators. The 6 to 8% tariffs will be removed within the next 3 years.
With the latest pact, Korean automakers hope to beat out their Japanese rivals in Canada, its fifth largest export market. The deal will help Korea diversify its exports and usher in more investment from Canadian businesses. Seoul, meanwhile, has exempted nearly 1/5 of sensitive agricultural goods such as rice and earmarked $2 billion to help Korean agriculture and livestock industries stay competitive both at home and abroad. Keeping momentum from the trade pact, Korea hopes to expand cooperation with Canada in areas of energy, science, and Arctic studies. The FTA, after it's signed on Monday, will be sent for parliamentary approval in both countries. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Ottawa.
This year's UN General Assembly is ongoing in New York, where UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with more than 100 world leaders on the sidelines over the coming days. Among them will be North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong. Now, the UN says Lee will sit down with Ban this coming Saturday, that's September 27th. The two are expected to touch upon many issues, including the security situation on the Korean Peninsula and North Korea's human rights record. On the same day, Lee is also scheduled to give a speech to the UN General Assembly that will be a first in 15 years for a North Korean foreign minister. Meanwhile, a major South Korean news outlet reports that notable economic reforms are underway in Pyongyang. It says the latest change involves family unit farming, giving workers greater financial incentives based on their input. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
A major shift in North Korea's economic policy will let North Korean farmers keep more than half of their profit starting next year. Citing sources familiar with North Korean affairs, Seoul-based YTN reports that the North plans to distribute an equal portion of farmland to households, allowing them 60% of their harvest, with the state taking the remainder. Currently, groups of 20 to 30 people assigned to work at collective farms divide up a portion of the yield among them. Family unit farming is expected to give them more incentive to work harder, giving the impoverished state a much-needed boost in agricultural output. North Korea has reportedly been running a pilot program on a few factories and farms since its announcement of economic reforms in 2012.
The expansion of household farming and self-management of factories is a sign of stability in the Kim Jong-un's regime. North Korea could boost its overseas economic cooperation based on its market economy, but to a level where it doesn't get out of control.
But despite the bold reform proposals, many are skeptical about whether it will succeed, as fundamental uncertainties about the regime remain. 황상희, 아리랑 뉴스.
And staying with North Korea, the regime had sent strong warnings to the south recently to stop flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. Experts say there might be a reason as to why Pyongyang is being extra sensitive about this issue this time around. Our Son Jung-in tells us more.
North Korea has taken issue with the cross-border spread of anti-Pyongyang leaflets by civic groups a month after it remained tight-lipped on South Korea's proposal for high-level inter-Korean talks. The North is demanding such provocations be halted if Seoul wants to resume inter-Korean dialogue. It went on to threaten a possible retaliation, saying the leaflets are a more grave provocation than shooting and shelling. The anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaign, waged by civic activists, mostly North Korean defectors in the South, has been going on for years despite calls from other activists for them to stop. The balloons flown into the North are known to be well liked by North Koreans because they contain $1 bills, medicine, and other daily necessities, along with hundreds of thousands of leaflets denouncing the three-generation power transfer in the North. Experts say the North is reacting strongly now, mainly because the leaflets criticize its political system and its young leader Kim Jong-un. Others say it's using the situation as a means to pressure the South.
North Korea views its system and dignity as its top priority, so that's why they are showing a very strong reaction. But we also need to consider the possibility that the North is taking advantage of the situation to put more pressure on the South.
Although there has not been any serious reaction from the North, experts believe inter-Korean ties are not likely to improve anytime soon. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
The company may have caused investors to worry about its record $10 million bid for a prime real estate in Seoul, but Korea's largest automaker Hyundai Motor continues to push for its goal of becoming a premium brand. For this week's Industry Insight, our Song Ji-san takes a look at Hyundai Motor's latest drive toward achieving that goal.
This is a crossroad in Seoul's rich and hip Gangnam-gu district, where imported car showrooms are peppered along the street. Just across Mercedes-Benz and BMW, Hyundai Motor recently opened its first brand exhibition gallery called Motor Studio, underlining the Korean automaker's ambition to upgrade its brand image.
Hyundai's premium sedan model, the Genesis, is rotating on a wall, showcasing its platform. The launch of this brand gallery underscores Group Chairman Jung Mong-gu's ambition to brand Hyundai Motor as a premium automaker. Hyundai has been struggling in the U.S. market this year, losing ground to Japanese automakers, which have benefited from a combination of the weakened Japanese yen and discount promotions. Hyundai aims to counter by emphasizing its high-end line of automobiles, something it hopes will boost its brand image and ultimately sales across the board. Early signs are encouraging in the all-important U.S. market. The automaker's overall market share in the U.S. is in the mid-4% range, but its share in the luxury car market was at nearly 7% last year. Hyundai aims to push that mark to 8% by the end of this year. If the goals are achieved, the new Genesis sedan will be the reason. It's the focal point of the company's strategy in the United States. Hyundai says the sedan's performance is on par with BMW 7 Series, but is priced about 10% lower than its targeted competition, the BMW 5 Series. Sales of Genesis in the U.S. more than doubled in June from the beginning of this year after launching the new model. That boosted the sales portion of mid to large-size sedans from 53% last year to 56% by end of July. But experts say Hyundai has a long way to go before it can sell itself as a high-end automaker.
It marks only the beginning for Hyundai's challenge to become a premium brand in all aspects. For instance, when BMW launches its new 5 Series, they improve a lot on the performance by reducing its weight by at least 100 kilograms and enhancing its output by 15%. Hyundai must focus on competency when launching new models, as they seem to lack that improvement with heavier weights and less fuel efficiency.
And those same rules apply in the domestic market, where combined shares of Hyundai and Kia Motors at home last month dipped below 70% for the first time in 7 years, as more consumers turn to German diesel models with higher fuel efficiencies. 송지선, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Another Korean female golfer has claimed victory on the LPGA Tour. This time, it's Jung who won the Yokohama Tire LPGA Classic in Alabama on Sunday. The 24-year-old birdied 4 of the last 8 holes, matching world number 1 Stacy Lewis stroke for stroke on the final day. She finished the tournament at record 21 under par, 267 total. Now, it was Ho's second career tournament win and her first since 2009. And now on to the continent's biggest sporting event, the 17th Asian Games. South Korea continues adding gold to its medal count. Our Kwon So-ah gives us all the highlights following up from the weekend.
Another gold medal for South Korea in the women's 25-meter pistol team event as the first full week of the Incheon Asian Games got underway on Monday. The 2014 Incheon Asian Games have already been full of success stories, surprises, and disappointments for Korea. South Korea won their first gold medal on Saturday when Lee Ha-sung won gold in wushu. And Korea has a new air pistol star, Kim Chong-yong, who won 2 gold medals on Sunday. There's a bright future ahead of the 17-year-old sensation, who not only contributed in winning in the 10-meter team event, but beat his idol and Olympic gold medalist Jin Jong-ho in the 10-meter individual event. There were also some disappointments. One of the biggest events that took place on Sunday was Marine boy Park Tae-hwan's attempt to win the gold medal in the men's 200-meter freestyle swimming event, but Korea's best swimmer could only manage a bronze. What started off as a fierce competition between Park and his Chinese rival Sun Yang ended up with Japan's Kosuke Hagino snatching the gold. In football, both South Korea's men's and women's teams cruised to their 3rd wins of the tournament. On the men's side, the South Korean national team beat Laos 2-0. The women thrashed the Maldives 13-0, with 10 different players scoring in the match. The team has scored 28 goals in just 3 matches in these Asian Games. South Korea also swept the fencing events, winning 4 gold medals. The team also took 3 golds in judo. Monday's schedule is packed with exciting events, with much attention focused on South Korea's first baseball game versus Thailand. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Now, shifting gears to politics, the newly selected interim leader of Korea's main opposition party says he is willing to sit down with the chairman of the ruling party and bring an end to the prolonged deadlock at the National Assembly. It's been nearly a month since regular parliamentary sessions began, but the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has boycotted all proceedings over the Seoul ferry bill. Interim Chief Moon Hee-sang says he would meet with the families of ferry victims and hardliners within the party to hear their complaints and explain his position. The ruling Saenuri Party plans to carry on with its sessions this week with or without the opposition and pass some 90 pressing bills related to the economy and public welfare. The government has set aside $8 billion to spend next year for spurring the Park Geun-hye administration's vision for a creative economy. The Science Ministry says the government's interministerial budget for achieving that vision next year went up 17% from this year. About $20 million will be used for building regional creative economy centers across the nation. Those will help establish new businesses. Some $153 million will be used to help people turn their creative ideas into real business models. That's up 36% from this year. Now, it's often called the ICT Olympics. The International Telecommunications Union meeting will begin in Korea's southern port city of Busan in about a month's time. The high-profile event could shift how countries and people use and access the internet. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The countdown has begun. In less than a month, the 19th ITU Plenipotentiary Conference kicks off in Korea's southern port city of Busan. The ITU, or the International Telecommunications Union, is an information and communications arm of the United Nations. It sets technological standards, allocates radio frequencies and satellite orbits, and works to improve the quality of communication services. And for the meeting, some 3,000 government delegates from the ITU's 193 member states will participate, along with some 150 information and communications technology ministers and high-level officials. Around 70 issues, including internet-related public policy, cybersecurity, and online child protection, are expected to be brought to the table. It's the first time Korea will host the ITU conference that takes place every 4 years, and the second time in Asia after Japan hosted it in 1994.
So it's a very good opportunity for our countries to make our role as the global leading country in the field of the ICT global policy making and global diplomacy.
Korea wants to discuss Internet of Things and ICT convergence, both of which are closely linked to the government's creative economy drive. The ICT ministry believes the global event will lay the foundation for the country's communication industry to reach the next level and raise Busan's exposure on the world stage. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
The ITU conference is also expected to provide a boost for Korea's network technology industry. Samsung Electronics will be providing the wireless network for the conference, while Ubiquitous, a local mid-sized company, will install fixed-line services. It's the first time that Korean firms were selected to supply network equipment at a large-scale international event like this one with over 2,000 participants. Now, over in New York, world leaders will gather on Tuesday to discuss the threat of global warming at the UN Climate Summit. Ahead of their talks, though, people around the globe took to the streets demanding action before it's too late. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Hundreds of thousands of people worldwide took to the streets on Sunday to call on world leaders to act to cut carbon emissions and stop climate change. The People's Climate March, which was held in over 160 countries, comes ahead of the UN Climate Summit in New York on Tuesday. Protesters carried sunflower signs and held up posters and banners that demanded action. Organizers say some 300,000 people joined in a march in New York, including UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, and actor Leonardo DiCaprio, in what was the largest protest ever on the issue. The UN chief, who was wearing a T-shirt that read, "I'm for climate action," told reporters that this was the planet in which future generations will live and there is no Plan B or Planet B. Large rallies also took place in Australia and Europe. Organizers in Australia said as many as 30,000 participated in Melbourne rallies as the country faces severe droughts, bushfires, and storms, while some 40,000 marchers are said to have showed up in London. Tuesday's summit will bring together 125 heads of state with the hope of signing a universal agreement by the end of 2015. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
few years ago, off the coast of Incheon, some divers found remnants of a very old ship, but they had no idea just how old the ship actually was. Our Im Yoon-hee joins me today with this astonishing historical find. Welcome to the program, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Right, so they first found this a few years ago off of Yeongdo Island here in Korea. And, through modern technology and through years of excavation, they were actually able to identify the actual age, and it's much older than people had originally anticipated. So take a look.
4 years ago, off of Incheon's Yeongdo Island, remnants of a large wooden ship were discovered, along with its contents, including what looked like ancient celadon pieces. Rusty iron pot pieces, along with some pottery, were recovered, as was a worn piece of wood from the hull of a ship, finally revealing the truth that was shrouded behind years of mystery. During the 2 years of research, towards the end, the truth was finally recovered. And indeed, the vessel was much older than originally anticipated. In fact, it was over 2,000 years old, coming from the Silla dynasty. The shape of the ship is completely different from any other ships recovered from the Koryo dynasty, further proving its ancient origins.
Koryo dynasty vessels usually have 3 levels, but in the case of Yeonghung Dosun ship, the base only has a single tier, and the sides are shaped like an L. So the absence of the other 2 levels and the shape confirm it is from the Silla dynasty.
Through carbon testing, the samples showed they're from the 8th century, reaffirming researchers' predictions about the ship coming from the Silla dynasty, instead of the later Koryo dynasty. But it's what was inside of the ship that's most important. The many containers and pots recovered are now being treated as priceless historical treasures.
There are no legs and the bottom is very deep. It's also very large. Overall, the shape signifies that this iron pot is from the Silla dynasty from the Hwangnam-dong area or the Changmyeong-Malhungmi area. The iron pots and shapes are very similar.
The unique textures and designs shed new light on the Silla dynasty, as does the discovery of the various dyes used then, also found within some of the containers. One thing, however, is now certain, that this is the oldest sea discovery to be found in the waters of Korea.
So did they say how many pieces in total altogether were actually found?
So they actually found a little over 850 different celadon pieces and different pots, iron pots, and so a very big, a very large find.
850.
850, yeah. So as you saw in the report, many of them are actually completely intact, which is an amazing discovery after all these years. But it's very interesting. The vessel they found it in, they actually originally believed it was a vessel used to transport timber during the Koryo dynasty. But as the report said, when they researched, they actually found that it's much older and it's from the Silla dynasty.
So it was the boat's shape that hinted to the possibility of it being much older than a ship originating from the Koryo dynasty.
Right, so they're saying this L shape of the sides of the boat, they said this is actually originating from the 5th century to 9th century. It's a style found then, and so this particular find falls into that category, and it does differ from the later Koryo dynasty designs. But it's interesting, 2,000 years later, the bulk of the ship that they found, they said it's about 6 meters long, 1.4 meters wide, which is after 2,000 years in the water, over 2,000 years in the water, is still very much intact. And so it's a big historical find, a big archaeological find for people, for the history and culture of Korea. And so a very good, precious find for us to keep.
Valuable finding as well. All right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for bringing this story to us today.
It was a pleasure.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Skies across the nation are looking quite clear across most of the regions, which includes in Incheon, where the Asian Games are being held. The current temperature there is at 26 degrees with a cool breeze at 2 meters per second. Now, as for the rest of the nation, we are expecting our daytime highs to range in the mid to high 20s. However, our evening temperatures are expected to drop into the teens. And starting tomorrow, we are expecting rain due to the indirect effects of Typhoon Fong-wong. That rain will start from the south and expand over to the whole nation by Wednesday, so try to avoid any outdoor activities, especially if you're in the coastal regions. Now going over to our today's readings. Seoul will be hot at 29 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan is reaching up to 29 and 27 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island is slight drizzling at 25, while Dokdo hits 24, while Namkunggang is cool at 23. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Before wrapping up, though, we are just getting reports that the ruling Saenuri Party's chairman and the main opposition party interim leader Moon Hee-sang will be meeting at 4 p.m. Korea time, so I'll be back with those and more stories at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.